Alright, so time to go ahead and move on to some new constructions here. And with that, we end up having constructions 8 through 10, which are copying a line segment and then moving into some of the perpendicular line constructions. So first off, we're going to start with construction 8, which is copying a line segment. This is not meant to be a difficult construction, but for some reason, I guess it's people just overthink it a little bit. So keep that as a heads up. Don't overthink this construction because it's really meant to be something that's kind of straightforward and a little bit easier to deal with. Whenever doing this, you're always going to start out with a line segment given. So you're probably going to have a line segment AB. They might use different letters, but that's what you have. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and create a new segment over here, or it can be anywhere really, but we're just going to intentionally place it here, that is the same length or congruent to segment AB. So to do that, we first have to create a starting point. And I'm just going to create that and call it A prime. Now in transformations, which is the next thing we're going to be covering in class, whenever we move an object or copy an object, we always have what's called a pre-image and an image. Now we will get into that more in the future, but what it really boils down to right now is A is basically being copied to A prime, and that tells me that A prime is the copy or the clone of A. Then what I want to do is I want to come in and I want to set my center on A because I have A prime, so I want to start with A. And I want to find, in this case I actually kind of get somewhat lucky, I want to find the marking that is closest to that point B. Okay, these compasses aren't perfect. If we were using a compass like this, well, it'd be a lot easier to do it because I could just place my needle down on A and I could put my pencil intentionally out here on B. And so with one of these compasses, it's a lot easier to do these constructions. Most of you will probably be dealing with these compasses, so you just gotta kind of deal with it being close. Now remember, when I'm grading it, I'm not grading on perfection. I'm grading on whether you were able to correctly follow the steps, and then there is going to be some neatness associated with it. You got to do a good job and keep it clean. So we have that. That gives me this. Now with these compasses, what I can do is I can take my pencil and I can give a little bit of shading. And when I move it, you can see that point kind of pop up, and it shows up even better on the camera than it does in like firsthand. But what I'm going to do is now I got to take this center and I need to slide it over here to my new point A, or A prime. And now I'm going to create an arc. And the reason I create the arc is I'm guaranteeing that any point on this new arc will be the same distance from A prime, right? No matter where I put this other point B prime, it's going to be the same distance from A prime as B is from A. So we would have congruent segments. You do not have to create an arc that's this big. You could have simply created an arc that big and you would have been just fine. So what do? Well, I just go ahead. Oh man, I screwed it up. Got in a hurry. So I go ahead and I create the arc from pointing that goes from A prime to this new point B prime, because B prime is the copy of B, right? It's the clone of B. And I know that these two segments, AB and A prime B prime, have to be congruent. I know that because this radius for this arc is the same as here with how I measured it. And then that's it. That is really all there is to that construction. Now for construction 9, this one is a perpendicular, which here's our symbol. That's a symbol for perpendicular. Bisector of a segment. So in this case, yet again, you will start out by being given you'll be given a segment AB. Once again, it can be different letters. Alright, it doesn't have to be A and B. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is put the compass on A. And in this case, I'm going to find a point that's somewhere close to B. The great thing about this is it does not have to be exact. But what I do have to do is I have to make sure that that's the radius I'm going to use. So I'm going to have to label that radius. I got to make sure all these other markings are gone so I don't confuse myself. But I have to use that same radius in the future. Okay, so we got to mark it. Let's kind of having some foresight. So go ahead and mark that radius. Use your pencil, make a few markings. If you're using one of these compasses, just make sure that it matches up, and then turn the knob and lock it in. Once I have that though, I'm going to go ahead and create a semicircle that goes to both sides. So you notice how this semicircle comes out, because I'm going to create a perpendicular line out through here. So I need to make sure I'm coming past this point out here on the bottom and on the top, or to both sides basically, so that I can make sure that I'm going to find this. And keep in mind, like, every point on this arc is the same distance from A as B is. So if I drew a line from A to out here, and I did a segment here, that segment would have to be the same length as AB. So then I switch my compass, and this is where having that other radius marked down is helpful. And you can tell, like right here. Now, I'm going to go through my words a little bit, but you see that I draw my compass, and I have a semicircle again, which I know I stopped a little short, but you see what I'm saying. The semicircle would be just a touch longer. And then from here, you notice we have 2 points. These are 2 new points. Well, those new points, we can go ahead and just call them C and D. And I'm going to go ahead, set up my straight edge, and there. Now I could say it's a line, or I could say it's a segment. It doesn't matter which one it is, because the only thing that matters is that it is perpendicular to AB. So we could say that CD is perpendicular to AB, and that if we put a new point here, E, we could say that BE is congruent to AE, which would be the bisecting part, saying that these two segments are congruent. That's, remember, perpendicular means 90-degree angle. Bisector means that it splits it into 2 congruent halves. And so perpendicular, bisector. That's what we have. Next up, we go ahead and we look at what happens if we want to just draw a it was 9, so we're on 10. So this is if you want to draw a perpendicular line to a given line through a point on the line. Alright, that on is very, very important. It has to be a point that's on it. So, so what we go ahead and do, we're going to start by being given a line. And you're going to have a point somewhere on it. If you notice, I'm not putting that point exactly at the midpoint. Okay, a line, which in this case we might say line L, a line cannot have a midpoint because to have a middle you have to have ends so you can actually measure. But if we don't have endings, we can't measure out a middle. So we just know it's somewhere on there. This is line, or this is point A. And what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to place our compass on here. And we are going to go ahead and create a circle an arc that intersects the line twice. Some people like to go ahead and just do a circle. I don't care. Okay, if you want to just do an arc or if you want to do a full circle, that's fine. It's not going to affect the outcome of this construction. But here, we're going to name this point up here B, and this point down here C. Of course, you can switch them, it doesn't matter. And now we have a segment. So with that segment, we're going to do the perpendicular bisector, which is what we just did here. So we're just going to do the same thing we did with this construction, just on a little bit smaller scale here. So we set our center at B. We find a mark that comes close to C, which in this case we actually have one that'll perfectly line up with C. And I need to go ahead and mark that. Okay, keep in mind we have to mark our compass because we have to use that again. And that does mean I have to erase this other one over here. So you notice my new marking. When I switch it, I put my center over on C. And notice that's going to match up perfectly again, right? So I go ahead and I draw my arc. Now the great thing about this is this should go exactly through A. I'll line it up. We have that. There's my 2 points. And voila. We have our segment. Or a line, segment. Doesn't matter which one it is, right? And that is perpendicular. So this right here is D and E, and we can say that DE, segment DE, is perpendicular to segment or to line L, which would be line BC. Alright, so that's what we have, and I hope this helps you. If not, just come up and ask me some questions. Alright, bye.